I was actually just having that conversation last week. I mean, that's one of the, I guess, the impetus of me reaching out and trying to find other people to play, join and play some music with, because that is the one of the main things that I do to keep that creative side alive. I still play on Sundays. I'll still play, piano at church, those types of things and everything. And I just played at a funeral this past Saturday. And, those being able to continue to do that, not only, keeps that creative side of my brain going, but, the actual mental part of it, having to remember, the things that you're doing that you may not do every single day. And, just trying to stay, on top of that and everything, and just keep that part of my brain from getting too old.
Welcome to DFW Grit. I'm Dr. James Taylor, and I'm your host, and this is more than just a podcast. We dive into the stories of the movers, the shakers, the small business owners, the entrepreneurs, right here in the DFW Metroplex. This is your home for authentic, real stories that prove what happens when you don't back down. Let's get to work. All right, hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of DFW Grit. As always, I'm your host, Dr. James Taylor. Today, we are joined by a Renaissance man. Did a quick, let's just say a little bit of research via Facebook and LinkedIn. And man, just to go over some of this guy's highlights, he is a tech teacher. He is a campus director, former dean of academics, e-learning coach, choir director, music minister, another tech ed instructor. And in all reality, I think the best part about this is I shared this with him at the beginning, at the onset here. The reason I reached out to him was he put a post on one of our local Facebook groups, and he said he was looking for other members to join a jazz ensemble that he's putting together. And I've shared with this before. In some of my travels, if you will, I spent some time in Kansas City, Missouri. And man, one of the bigger regrets that I have in the time that I spent there was I took zero opportunity to take part in any of the local music scene that they had, specifically the jazz scene. So in no way, shape, or form was this even on my radar, but this random guy posts this thing on there. It's like, hey, I'm looking for people that want to get together and jam and play some jazz. And just that post alone made me reach out to him. So to the DFW Grit world, please help me welcome Mr. Mike Kunkle. Mike, I hope I'm pronouncing that last name right. We didn't go over pronunciation in your pre-show notes.
No, Kunkel is exactly right. No, the one thing you actually just didn't touch on was my beginnings in education as an actual band director for 10 years. So
10 years, that's awesome.
Yep.
So how's the how do we get from a place of band director and e-learning and technology professor?
Well,
Well,
and the bottom line was this. I mean, I came out of college locally, Texas Wesleyan, back in 91. And, I've already been a part of music ministry, and I was looking at band directing and that type of thing as a way to make a living. It's something I enjoy doing. And, the jobs were not plentiful without experience. And so I did not start at one of the big high schools and doing marching band and all that kind of stuff and everything that I grew up doing. I basically in private schools and that type of thing. And I was asked to come in and build programs from scratch. And so that was something that I got my teeth into. And being a trombone player myself, I hadn't picked up things like a saxophone or clarinets or flutes, except for a course in college, to get a credit and everything. And so that was part of my learning from that point, was to learn all the instruments so I could teach the instruments and everything. And that was it was fun. And it was challenging, and things changed with school leaderships and those kinds of things and everything. And so I had to start looking at other things to make a living. And staying in the education world, I started working on my master's and looked at, technology was something that was always fun, but it became actually the job, as well as campus leadership and being, assistant principal, those types of things. And along came COVID, and COVID changed things for so many people. And in the education world, it became, okay, we got to go online. And I was working for a school district in Arlington, a charter school district called Newman International. And I was the one tabbed to, hey, let's get the kids online. What can you do? And I'm like, okay, let's find out. And so that was a challenge right there in itself, was to figure out, the whole e-learning landscape and, get all of that stuff online. And I had about 2 weeks to do it in, and that's kind of where that went. So,
yeah, what can you do? Well, I can figure it out, I guess. That's what I can do.
And that's kind of been my MO. Most of my life was like, is there a video on it? Is there a book on it? Is there, a chat group, something to help me get to where I need to go and everything, and just learning. That's been part of it. So there you go.
Well, and like you said too, you said you had 2 weeks to figure it out. Yeah. Like I remember that. So like I'm a chiropractor, right, in North Richland Hills, and I remember I was seeing kids that week because the week that it quote all came down was the spring break that didn't end.
Exactly.
So I was kids are walking in at 10 or something like that. Oh, it's spring break this week. You're not in class. Nope, sure isn't. And then next week they were walking in at 10, 11 again. Like, oh, spring break was extended. Yep, sure was. And it was that year was the spring break that didn't end.
Yep, exactly. And in some cases, I will say this. I'm not saying it to be mean, but in some cases, some of those kids still haven't come back. They may be here physically, but they haven't come back all the way. So.
There's a whole lot of truth in that. And hell, for all intents and purposes, there's some adults that never came back either.
Yeah, I get it.
That's awesome, dudes. So also kind of just a funny little aside. I told you, like, I have not a shred of musical talent. I did hold a trombone for about a semester though. And literally my one performance, if you will, we had, our little our little band performance in 5th grade.
Right.
And it was after the performance where the band director came up and they're like, hey, I don't know if this is entirely for you. And I'm like, what makes you say that? I was like, literally, I couldn't read music, but I had a trombone, and it's hard to fake trombone because you have to make so much, such exaggerated movements, as opposed to if I had a keyed instrument, I could just do this and fake it a whole lot better. But when you're one count behind everybody else on that slide coming out, apparently it's really easy to tell.
Yes, it is. It is. And I mean, of course, if you had a band director at that time that was worth his salt, he would have looked at you and said, this may not be, you may not be doing great right now, but I'll let it slide.
Right. Got you there. I'm picking up what you're laying down.
Okay.
So one thing that, again, in going through, the LinkedIn and your CV and whatnot, one of the reasons I started this podcast, like I said, from 9 to 5, aside from the lunch hour, I'm a chiropractor. I wanted to do something to use the other side of my brain. And this is basically a different type of creative outlet. Mm-hmm. And do you have that same kind of dichotomy, if you will, between all the music stuff versus the e-learning thing? Because in my mind on paper, I looked at this, I'm like, man, this guy's kind of he's using the whole thing up top as opposed to left and right.
I was actually just having that conversation last week. I mean, that's one of the, I guess, the impetus of me reaching out and trying to find other people to play, join and play some music with, because that is the one of the main things that I do to keep that creative side alive. I still play on Sundays. I'll still play, piano at church, those types of things and everything. And I just played at a funeral this past Saturday, and those being able to continue to do that. Not only, keeps that creative side of my brain going, but, the actual mental part of it, having to remember, the things that you're doing that you may not do every single day. And, just trying to stay, on top of that and everything, and just keep that part of my brain from getting too old,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I mean, it's incredibly important to do that.
It is.
Because I was, again, chiropractor, like it's anatomy. It's, It's black and white. There hasn't been a whole lot of discoveries in anatomy.
Right.
Anytime recently. So it was like, I needed this, again, this creative outlook. That's where the podcast came from. And again, just looking on paper, So you said you had to put this whole thing together. Well, not this whole thing, but when COVID came around, like, hey, you're going from music
Right.
to e-learning. You got 2 weeks to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
One of the regular questions I ask a lot of guests here is simply, tell me about a time when you had to kind of find a way or make a way. Because again, like in all the teachers that I've spoke to that come in and out of these doors, like you guys were all, regardless of subject, having to find a way or make a way. But I've never actually had anyone, heck, to record the answer. Like what was that like when your entire job literally changed and they're like, hey, you got 2 weeks, let's go.
And I tell you, I don't have enough time to go through all of the steps with you and everything, but understand that, I was overall the teachers that were doing, doing this and everything at the time. It was them getting everything they taught onto a platform. We used it's a learning management system called Canvas, and I think a lot of people know what that is, but if they don't, that they can Google that. I'm not going to tell you, but teaching them how to do that, and then connecting all of the apps onto a portal that was a single sign-on portal, using Google, those types of things and everything, so that the students would see when they logged in, here are the apps that I'm supposed to use. Here's the Canvas for the teacher. Here's the Google Classroom, all that stuff and everything. And honestly, I had to find the portal for them to use for that. And it was, like I said, 2 weeks to do it. But, once I found the portals and how to sign on and how to link everything together and everything, it came together pretty quickly.
He says in hindsight,
it was, I could do my part, but then it was still up to the teachers to make sure they had their stuff on there. And it was up to them to make sure that they were contacting the students and that the students were actually getting online and all that kind of stuff and everything. So yeah, there's a lot more to it, but yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
Again, in hindsight, yeah, totally figured out. Totally easy.
Right.
Something that actually just kind of popped into my head. Just clarification. Right now, are you doing music stuff or are you doing e-learning stuff and technology stuff?
Full time right now, I'm doing basically, in-person teaching at a high school in Grapevine. The students that are here doing, classes like principles of IT, audio, video production, those types of things and everything. But, the majority of that's still on a learning portal. They still, use Canvas when it comes to putting the curriculum together and everything. So, and then music wise, just part-time filling in at church, and things like that, with playing piano and everything. So that's kind of how it goes there.
Okay. So where I was going with this, just so I can figure out where you're currently sitting. I feel like that's with the creativity aspect that you teach. What am I trying to say? Is that?
I don't know.
Is that something that nobody ever really, to the best of my knowledge, kind of pointed out to me as a student, if you will, that hey, this is kind of a left brain thing, or this is kind of a right brain thing. And man, if you can marry these two, whatever it is that you're doing is going to make things a whole lot more interesting. Is that something that kids are more aware of now?
And honestly, what they have a hard time doing is basically doing things step by step. And here's this assignment and doing this step by step assignment and things like that. They kind of just want to know, okay, so how does this program work? And then giving them like a project to learn, as they're going and everything. And again, some of the kids don't do well just because they're used to having a lot of things kind of given to them and everything. And but the ones that are creative enough to do those, they do it better that way. And that's kind of how my teaching has kind of evolved into as well.
Just almost kind of like a for lack of a word, like a self-directed kind of thing.
Well,
here's the overview.
Right. And kind of being that moderator, kind of being that, to help them, get from point A to point B whenever they have an issue and things like that and everything. And so it's just been more successful for me that way.
So do you bring, so again, you're on the kind of
facilitator was the word.
There we go. That's a good word.
Okay.
So then do you bring like your musical stuff into the classroom there? Cause you're not necessarily in a music classroom per se, but it's still a creative outlet, if you will, or creative form of education.
Right. well, part of the AV class, the V stands for, the A stands for audio, and the audio, basically that has to do with music and, sound effects, music, those types of things that you're going to have in any kind of situation where there's a video. Like I kind of joked with you about, having a theme song for your podcast here and everything. And so that's just something to me that would make it, those types of things appealing to, the people that are like me, that sit there and get a little hook in their mind when it comes to something like that. So yeah, it is what we do. It is part of what we do here. So yeah.
That's awesome. So like you were in education in music. The environment, if you will, demanded that you switch to a different field within education and the whole technology thing.
Right.
Are you gonna chill here? Are you gonna slide back into like music directing, or has that now become more of just that's what you do for you outside of the classroom?
At my age, I'm getting to the point where I am, I'm pretty close to retirement, when it comes to education and things like that. But as my dad would put it, my druthers would be to be, in a music environment, and everything. And so if I found something, tomorrow, I would definitely, gravitate back towards that, because that's my first love. Always has been, always will be. And that's kind of why I posted what I posted on Facebook, if you don't mind me segueing to that. Unless you want to ask that question, I'm sorry.
No, by all means, man. That's where I was going to go next with this.
Yeah. So, being a student of, classical music, every type of music, church music and everything like that, the one that I enjoy performing the most is jazz. And being a part of a group that was filled out by former band directors, private lesson teachers, that type of thing and everything, was called the DFW Jazz Monsters. I believe they're still around. There's a lot of the band directors and things like that and stuff that are not part of it anymore. Some have died off. Those type, that type of thing. The originators of it. I got to give props to Larry Harrison, and I got to give props to Chuck Comfort. And Chuck Comfort was my high school actual jazz band director when I was at Halton. And they have passed on, and some of the joy of that group and things like that, kind of went with them, even though they're still performing, and so I'm looking at, a way to get some people involved that are in this area that just would like to just play and just have some fun, make music, keep that side of their brain going to keep from getting too old and things like that. And, there's plenty of venues around here that would actually take us, and as long as they don't mind playing for a meal or playing for beer or something like that. So, yeah.
Well, hell, again, if I had not some musical talent, I would play for a meal or play for beer.
Yep. Yep.
So like you said, you've got venues and stuff lined up. So this is another wonderful segue. Right. If people are interested in that, they want to, use that side of the brain, they've got a bit of jazz in them, maybe they haven't picked up their instrument in a while. Where's a good place for people to find you? Where can they join you?
Well, I mean, when it actually comes to playing, I don't have the group yet to play. So that's the one thing that I'm working on. And I'm hoping by after the first of the year that we have some people in place that we can actually start meeting and playing and things like that and everything. But for the interim, please reach out to me on Facebook. I'm trying to think the easiest way to find me would be just to email me, mrmdk65@gmail.com.
That's awesome.
That's the easiest way to find me right now. And like I said, reach out to me on Facebook. I'll have a group started on there as soon as I have the other ones collected that have been reaching out to me. And that's something I'm going to do over Christmas break, is basically make that so it'll be available and more.
I'll tell you right now, I've got one guy off the top of my head that I'm going to point your way. Okay. He's got, just to show you his dedication to jazz and music in and of itself. Right. Number one, he's got a beard that's about your color, but awesome. He's also got a gigantic back piece, a huge full back tattoo of a jazz scene. Because he is that committed. There's one day I've seen this guy shoot maybe like 4 years, and then one day he came in and he then had an earring, and then a couple days later he came in and he had a saxophone tattooed on his hand, right. And then after that he came, he's like, "Hey, I'm getting a full back piece done." Like just one day, something switched in his head. And he's like, "You know what?
Yep.
I'm just going to live my life the way I want it now." And he'd always tell me about the different horns and stuff that he'd buy. But he just talked about it. And then one day he's like, hey, I'm getting a full back piece. And actually went out to him. He put on a show at Meacham Airport, like a hangar show.
I played at one of those there. Yeah.
Did you play at the one there like a month or two ago?
No. It was this was a few years ago. No.
Okay. Because we were in the same room.
Yeah. No, Gary Sinise was there with his band, the Lieutenant Dan band, and everything as well. So yeah.
No way. That's cool.
Yep.
But like I said, so I've got a guy to point in your direction. Well, hey, dude, man, I really appreciate you, accepting the invite, because, again, it was just a stranger reaching out and going, hey, I can't play jazz, but if you want to talk on camera, I can do that.
Thank you.
So, again, dude, I appreciate your time. This is fantastic. I know you got to go because you got kids coming in the room, but, man, I appreciate it. I just want to say thanks for taking the time over your lunch hour.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.
All right, man, you have a great rest of your day. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. And just like that, like seriously, this is, I told you at the very beginning of this, back when this was Fueled by Spite, and now the reason that we're making the shift to DFW Grit, one of the big reasons we're doing this whole thing is collaboration. Fueled by Spite was James Taylor. But it put off some people just by the words alone. And again, I get it now. But if I'm putting people off, then I'm foregoing abilities to collaborate. And this was simply a guy who's like, hey, I'm looking for people to play jazz with. And I'm like, you know what? That's cool. Did a quick Facebook stalk. Man, he's got some stories to tell. He's got to just by his CV. So one more episode of DFW Grit in the books. Thanks, Mike, for coming on the show. If you guys know how to play a little jazz, reach out to Mike. He's looking for a couple of friends that want to use the left side of their brain. And I think that's awesome. So, as always, like, share, follow, tell your friends. If you're in the DFW area, you want to be on DFW Grit, you want to tell a couple of your stories about the stuff you had to go through and the things you had to do to get where you are. Again, we're always accepting interviews and guests on the show. You can sit right next to me, or we could pop you right here online. But as always, regardless of the name, Fueled by Spite or DFW Grit, it is still my assertion that you will absolutely learn more here by accident than elsewhere by design. Again, you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.